This is the Fat Loss Pro Podcast.
Fat Loss Pro Podcast.
Discover what's needed to burn, build, and shape the body you want. You'll walk away knowing what you need to do to create results now. Chris DeFay is the authority on fat loss and getting you in shape. Cutting edge, results-based info from the world's best that unveils the curtain to quicker, simpler, no-nonsense fat burning, muscle building, and quality health.
Welcome to the Physique Chiseling Fat Loss Pro podcast. I'm the Fat Loss Pro, Chris DeFay, and I have a jaw-dropping interview that left me on a massive high after. I have for you Dr. Robert Rakowski, someone that I have very much respected the viewpoint and teachings of. A chiropractor, kinesiologist, clinical nutritionist, the director of the Natural Medicine Center in Houston, and one of the most recognized endocrinologists in the US. That hardly scratches the brilliance of this man. We are going to cover the Magnificent Seven and body composition. Like always, jump on over to www.chrisdufay.com after for show notes, links, free programs and plans, and more importantly, to ask me the questions that you want answered. And then the next episode, I'll get along and answer them for you. This is all about giving you the real deal lowdown on how to get in fantastic shape. Gear up, this is going to be great. Dr. Bob, thank you so much for taking your time out for this call today. I know you've just been seeing patients and you've got a busy schedule ahead. So just wondering, before we get started and stuck into everything, can you give us a bit of a rundown on just why you're so magnificent and what it is that you do?
Well, thanks, Chris. First, thanks for having me as your guest. I'll let those be your words, even though we're going to talk about the Magnificent Seven. I've had 22 years of clinical experience working with people that have been anywhere from critically ill to multiple world champions, at least 20 different Olympians from the last Olympic Games. And, I think there's a couple secrets to our success. And one, we keep it simple, right? We stick to the basics. We realize that we are where we are today, all of us, because of the decisions that we've made. And so there's not a person I know that can't take their health game up just a notch. So we put them in touch with that and give them doable strategies, which is what we hope to do for everybody joining in on this today, right? And the golden rule is we treat others like we want to be treated. We know that we want guidance that would take us to be our best selves, and that's what we give. And the nice thing is I have so much passion about this. I have such great mentors that it's my goal to step up my game in every way, every day, and to share it with everybody I interact with. And so now I'm excited to share some of the things that I've learned over the years with your group.
Excellent. This is really, really good. All right, so I'm really pumped up because we're going to cover the Magnificent Seven. So let's get straight into it. What is the Magnificent Seven?
It's what I've nicknamed the lifestyle strategies that I think get us to be our best selves. So you've got to eat right, drink right, think right, move right, sleep right, poop right, talk right, every single day. And the better you do that, the better you're going to be.
I think the beauty of this is the simplicity, because it entails everything that we need to do to become in better shape, better health, and a better person. So let's delve into it first. What is the eat right portion of the Magnificent Seven?
Yeah, so I'm gonna use a couple simple quotes, and one is going to be from Jack LaLanne, and he said very simply, if God made it, it's okay. If man made it, don't touch it. Then Michael Pollan, in his book, Defense of Food, on his cover, he says very simply, eat food, not too much, mostly plants. But in the first chapter of his book, he says, something strange started happening in the 1960s and 1970s, and he says food started flying off the shelves of supermarkets and being replaced by food-like items. They look like food, they smell like food, they taste like food. Now, I'm not a fan of grains. In fact, those are highly optional, and people eat them. They should only be whole grains and organic. But he talked about a loaf of bread, and if you've ever baked a loaf of bread, you realize that there's about 5 ingredients in a loaf of bread. And in his book, he challenged people to look at a loaf of bread in the supermarket and find one that doesn't have less than 30 ingredients, 25 of which you can't pronounce.
Wow.
So chemicals have taken over our food. We even have these specialists called flavor chemists. And they use chemicals that, one, are supposed to make food taste really, really good. And what they found out very simply is that young kids overeat these hyperpalatable foods regardless of body weight. And when they overeat, what they find out is that fatness, this was published in the Journal of Pediatrics, fatness precedes inactivity. So as they gain fat, they get inflamed. As they get inflamed, their body has less energy because that inflammation devours a very critical molecule called nitric oxide that should dilate blood vessels to bring oxygen and nutrients to the tissue. So going back to make it simple, right, when we talk about nourishing our bodies, we want to get food from the earth, but understand that the governments around the world have now recognized that there's a global depletion of soil. It takes 30 different elements to make plants, animals, and humans, and we only, as a general rule, put 3 back in the soil. The number one fertilizer in the world is called NPK, nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium. So I don't care where your bank account starts. If you take 30 out for every 3 you put in, you're ultimately going to have a problem. And we have a problem with human malnutrition, right? So I'm a fan of sport, and if you look, for instance, at not the last UFC fight, but before that, Anderson Silva, a world-class athlete, threw a kick and broke his leg so badly, right? At the NCAA tournament a few years ago, there was a guy named Kevin Ware, 22 years old, jumped up in the air, landed down, and his tibia and fibula snapped in half such that the bones were sticking out of the skin. And you wonder how this can happen. Well, very simply, they don't have the minerals to solidify the protein matrix of the bone. They have weak bones and they snap.
They're malnourished.
Yeah, and in the U.S., by the way, if you're 50 years old and a female, your lifetime risk of an osteoporotic-related fracture is 1 in 2. And if you're over 50 and a male, it's 1 in 4. So we have profound malnutrition. We need to get back to eating from the earth and realize, as the journal Advances in Therapy said, food is too weak to replete depleted cells and bodies. Their next line is, therefore, supplementation is advisable for everybody. So for everybody, I recommend a high-quality multivitamin, a high-quality plant nutrient supplement with multiple plant nutrients, and then high-quality purified omega-3 supplementation. And that's how you will nourish your body with macro and micronutrients in the right way.
Do you have many patients that are quite against taking supplementation just due to being miseducated?
Well, fewer and fewer. But you got to remember that the word doctor literally means teacher. So when I work up a patient, we are going to have a 1-hour conversation to start. And by the time I'm done sharing published facts with them, I don't know that I've had a single person that didn't go, wow, I need to clean up my diet and I need to supplement. So they may start out that way, but you know, as you share the facts, it's really indisputable.
Do you think other healthcare professionals should take that exact same viewpoint as yourself and really make sure that they do sit down and educate the client so then they can have that adherence to what they need to do?
Oh, wouldn't that be nice? Yeah. Now we've got a whole different can of worms and topic that we opened here, but understand the way that the sick care system is set up in the United States. It is a sick care and not a healthcare system. You've got doctors that are needing to see 70, 80 patients a day where they get 5 minutes. This patient comes in with a problem. One of my mentors, Jeff Bland, calls it prescriptus interruptus. They basically have a prescription and say, here you go, fill it at the pharmacy, next, you know. So, you know, yeah, absolutely. You know, if we focused, and by the way, what precedes the Magnificent Seven, the base of the pyramid is love, and I like to quote Og Mandino. He's got a long dissertation on love, but one of the final lines is, and most of all, I will love myself, for when I do, I will zealously inspect all things that I allow to enter my mind, my heart, my soul, and my body. I would so much love, not to overuse the word, for people to really do that. And if you zealously inspected, you wouldn't put in genetically modified foods, you wouldn't take foods from depleted soils, you wouldn't put in these processed chemicals, and you would treat your mind the same way, you know?
I think you're really going into another topic that could take a lot longer. So I think that's definitely something that we're going to want to touch on another time. But I think if someone can actually use that information that you just said and make sure they take care of themselves, they're not going to make those poor decisions at the end of the day as well.
Absolutely.
Fantastic. All right, so let's move on to the drink right.
Yes, next on our list is drink right. And what we need to understand is that we're basically made of water, right? Our planet is 2/3 water. Our bodies are 2/3 water, and our cells are predominantly water. So we've got to really keep our body clean and hydrated with good, pure liquids. One of the things we know is that in the United States, and that's where I have the statistics, about 21% of calories that people consume are from liquids. And this just simply goes against nature. You should have pretty close to 0 liquid calories. The exception would be mother's milk, right? When kids grow up and drinking mother's milk, that's their source of calories. But as adults, that doesn't work for us. We know that eating is a lot more satisfying than drinking. And when people drink calories, they tend to overconsume and gain weight. And it's even worse if they do things like diet soft drinks. So people should drink at least half their body weight in ounces. I don't know if you're on the English system or metric system, but if you're looking at the kilograms, you should get maybe 10% more than your body weight in terms of what you weigh in terms of kilograms. If it's pounds, cut your weight in half and drink that many ounces. So a 200-pound person has to have at least 100 ounces of water a day, and that's just water. Now, you can also add on top of that coffee and tea, and there's actually some major health benefits of coffee and tea, especially the cleaner and better the product. But you will nourish your body, you'll hydrate your body. The brain is the most hydrated organ in human physiology. In fact, mental performance tends to drop with as little as 1% dehydration. And the sad reality is I do body composition testing on everybody that walks in the door with a test called bioimpedance analysis, and we can tell their hydration status. And as a general rule, the vast majority of people walking in my office are dehydrated. So drink right. No calories from liquids, half your body weight in pure water. Add on top of that, as your body likes, good clean coffees, good clean teas.
Perfect. I think you've covered absolutely everything with the drinking there, and definitely they can take away the points of knowing how much to drink and also what to drink. So let's move on to the Think Right now, because I think this one's really special that people should concern themselves with.
Yeah, this is really where it all starts. And I've done interviews in the past where that's where we started, because guess what? You think to drink, you think to eat, you think to move, right? All those things are influenced by the thoughts we think. And so we look at this beautiful structure, the brain, and we realize that it drives our physiologic processes. We've got this unconscious part of our brain that we're not so much aware of, but understand that with conscious thought we can affect that. Yogis have shown that you can actually relax and drop your blood pressure and slow your respiration. And one of my favorite exercises to do after an intense training session is take 10, 15 minutes and breathe deep, slow my breathing, and you get into this deep relaxation state. When you look at the brain, it's the most nutrient-dependent, energy-dependent system of the body. It's also the most stressed and toxin-vulnerable. So all of the Magnificent Seven strategies work together. One of my favorite researchers is a gentleman by the name of Sid Baker, a doctor with about 50 years' experience. And he says very simply, the nervous system and the immune system are derived from the exact same embryologic stem cells. They also essentially have the same function, and that the function of your immune system is to survey your internal environment and then elicit an appropriate response, whereas the goal of the nervous system is to survey the external environment and elicit an appropriate response. All of the exact same neurotransmitters within the central nervous system are found in the immune system, and in fact, we know that positive thoughts actually enhance immune function. There have been studies about optimists, and they simply live longer than pessimists. And by the way, I read a book years ago. It was called You Can't Afford the Luxury of a Negative Thought. I didn't know that that's completely true. You can have negative thoughts, but just don't focus on them. Focus on the positive. Focus on the good. Focus on putting all good things into your mind and sharing good things with others. And you, with a positive outlook, will statistically have a better immune system, lower probability of infection and chronic disease, and you will essentially live longer.
Yeah, that's really fantastic. Would you have any books or resources you would really urge people to go to?
Oh my gosh, more than I can count. One of the first classics, and I've read this book 4 times, it's called Think and Grow Rich, but first of all, they suggest that poor thoughts lead to poor actions, lead to poor results. Now, you don't have to take poor meaning financial, but you could expand it to that. Average thoughts lead to average actions, lead to average results, whereas exceptional thoughts lead to exceptional actions, lead to exceptional results. But one of the books that I just finished over the last 2 weeks is one that was recommended me by someone I really respect. It's called The Go-Giver.
Yeah.
And have you read that one?
Yeah, I have.
Yeah, and it's fabulous in that people need to realize that the better they are at putting other people's influence or interests above their own, the better they serve people, the better they themselves are served. So for people's reading list, why not start with the classic Think and Grow Rich, even though, it was written, 90 years ago. The truth within there is still as powerful. And then go with The Go-Giver and its sequels. Those are great. And then Bruce Lipton has The Biology of Belief, and Candace Pert had The Molecules of Emotion. And those are the four that are at the top of my head at this moment.
Yeah, Lipton's The Biology of Belief, I really got a lot out of that as well, because it obviously is not an airy-fairy kind of book, and he has such a medical background as well. So that was a fantastic read. I would highly recommend that.
Absolutely.
All right, fantastic. So let's move on to Sleep Right, catching the Zeds.
Oh, well, we live in this absolutely sleep-deprived world. You look at this, and there's a lot of different arguments as to why that happens. Some people are going to argue with electromagnetic radiation. Other people are going to suggest that artificial lighting is shutting off our circadian rhythm. But here's one thing that we know with over the last decade, and that is that the adrenal glands, the anti-stress glands, actually have melatonin receptors. And that melatonin, by the way, is our body's natural sleeping pill. And then we also know, by the way, that the gut makes 400 times or many hundred times more melatonin than the brain does. So we find out that it's our high-stress circumstance, elevated cortisol, elevated stress response that suppresses melatonin, just as melatonin tends to buffer or suppress the stress response. So I think so much of this sleep issue is that we're under high stress. Now, I can quote you directly from the literature, and this is basically what it said. Even though I don't like being called a primate, this particular publication said this: many, if not all, New World primates, meaning us, right, anything with two legs walking upright, has elevated cortisol and likely cortisol resistant. When your body releases a stress response, it gets into a fight or flight mode. It actually drives pick-me-up brain chemistry that makes you awake and vigilant, and suppresses calm and peaceful brain chemistry. So somehow we have to get into this mindset of really getting into a relaxed state. So I don't recommend that people watch movies or sporting events that are going to get them all excited during bedtime, because that'll keep them awake. It'll actually pick up their pick-me-up neurotransmitters, and that is one thing that does not promote deep sleep. So you should relax for a good hour before bed, maybe read a good book, and I actually mean a book. I don't mean anything electronic, because there's data suggesting that these EMFs can be somewhat of a problem. And keep your room nice and quiet and dark and cool, and have a regular sleep time, a regular sleep routine. There are some nutrients that are known to promote calming neurotransmitters. Magnesium's good at that. Passion flower, valerian, lemon balm, taurine is good, and melatonin is the top sleep nutrient of all time. So very simply, relax your mind, relax your body, nourish your calming neurochemistry, and sleep such that your body rests and recovers. And that's one of the best things that any of us can do for ourselves.
I'm an absolute huge proponent of this. And just recently, we actually, my wife and my daughter just moved into a new place. And so I was really wanting to make a serious stance on my sleep. So what I did was I didn't buy a new TV. Our bedroom is completely black, because I'm a big believer that the bedroom's just for two things: sleep and sex. And then, even because my 8-month-old daughter is absolutely fantastic, she sleeps herself from 6 p.m. to about 6:30 a.m. So we don't get woken with her. And making sure that there's no lights or noise coming through as well. I also sleep with earplugs as well. And I can tell you what, that my sleep quality is fantastic. And it's made a huge difference. And I can see with my own body composition as well, it's made a difference just with that alone.
You've just brought up an excellent thing. I tell people, if you're not running on rest and recovery, you're running on stress hormones. Yeah. And stress hormones, very simply, are catabolic to muscle, and they oppose the action of insulin, and therefore they're anabolic towards fat deposition.
So they're becoming insulin resistant.
Absolutely.
All right, fantastic. Sleep right, extremely important. Let's move on to poop right.
Yeah, don't we wish people would do more of that? Bowel function, it's really more we could call it detoxify, right? But, that didn't flow as well as poop, right? So while we're starting with the bowel, we realize that we also have a constipated society. And bowel function is essentially fiber, water, and neurologic tone. So when you look at fiber content, we've already talked that people are dehydrated, but guess what? They don't eat enough fruits and vegetables. They don't get enough fiber, and therefore that tends to back them up. When you look at the overall process of detoxification, there are literally 87,000 registered toxic chemicals in the environment. Those are the ones that are registered. There's likely more than that. In the United States, the EPA, Environmental Protection Agency, has been doing a human toxin inventory since 1972, looking at fat samples from surgical patients and cadavers, and they realized that the average person, by their estimate, has at least 700 toxins in their system at all times. Environmental Working Group did a study. They looked at umbilical cord blood of newborn infants, and they found that every child that they looked at, every single one, had more than 200 toxins in their blood before even the moment of birth. So these kids were exposed. They've also looked at meconium studies, baby's first poop, and have found all kinds of pesticides and intoxicants and heavy metals. So reality is we're all toxic. So the number one rule in toxicology is to separate yourself from the toxic source. And that means you need to do your best to breathe clean air, right? Create a home environment where you don't have toxic carpet outgassing and toxic paint. You want to drink clean water, and that means having a water filter at the tap or wherever you're getting it. Even these pitchers can work well, but you want basically a particle filter, submicron filter, as well as a chemical filter, which is going to be a carbon filter. Mm-hmm. You want to be careful about your food. It's best to use locally sourced foods that are organic and clean and not using pesticides. And just very simply minimize the toxins, the artificial things that you put in your body. And on top of that, do an intense, supervised detox. I suggest at least twice a year. All my patients, I recommend one intense week of detox at the start of the year and one sometime near summertime. And why not, over the course of the month, about at least 20 days a month, support detox with detox medical foods. Mm. And the rule in my practice is pretty simple. When in doubt, detox. And we've seen our greatest clinical gain, whether we're talking about critically ill people or athletes wanting to step up their game, with intense detoxification strategies.
It's obviously a very individualized and tailored thing, but is there any sort of guidelines that you could give people about what their detox during the 7 days could look like?
Oh, well, in terms of what they're putting in their body or what they might experience, or both?
Let's talk about what they're putting into their body.
Yeah, so again, we don't want to put anything toxic in, so we use all organic foods, multiple colored fruits and vegetables. I use medical foods that are literally proven to enhance humans' ability to clear toxins, heavy metals, foreign estrogens, things like that.
Can I ask what brand you use? Is it Metagenics that you use?
It is, yeah, and I didn't know that we could mention brands on this, but sure enough, I have been a paid speaker for Metagenics for 19 years at this point. I spoke for another nutrition company before them. I simply use their products because they're the industry leader in terms of quality and innovation. So, yeah, I use their Ultra Clear family, their Estrium family, their Metalloclear family. They've got, what's known as Advoclear and Glutaclear, and ways to give people the nutrients that they need to detox. We know that fasting just simply is not a solid strategy for most people to detox in this environment. Detox is protein dependent, it's energy dependent. The first phase of liver detoxification are enzymes. They're called the cytochrome P450 family. And 24 hours into a protein fast, those enzyme levels drop very substantially. So by giving them a medical food fast, they get the macronutrients, the micronutrients, the water, the good food choices. And the typical person is going to do about 4 medical food shakes a day, buffered with plant nutrients and maybe accessory detox products like Glutaclear and Advoclear, put all good things into their body over the course of that week. Drink their water, make sure that they're pooping and sleeping and everything else. But I tell people the symptoms of chronic poisoning include fatigue, sleep disturbance, intestinal distress, allergy symptoms, headaches, confusion, and anxiety. And they may experience one or all of those things over the course of that week. And that's a sign that the detox is working. Now, if it gets too harsh for them, then we back down the detox and increase the buffers because, a program that's not doable won't get done. But we'll also let them know if they are able to tough it out, then the results can absolutely be remarkable.
if someone's really experiencing bad symptoms during the detox, is that a cause of overtoxicity?
Yeah, there's a book called Wellness Against All Odds, a story of 30 cancer patients, all to beat cancer with nothing but natural remedies, but they all did daily coffee enemas. And so we may do coffee enemas, we may do infrared saunas, we may do foot baths. There's a lot of ways of getting after it. And then some people, they just need to reduce the amount of medical food because they are just plain that toxic.
So definitely with detoxification, it's not just pushing the detoxes out, but it's also limiting what goes in, is what we talked about before.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
Fantastic. All right, let's move on to Talk Right.
Yeah, so, we've got 100 trillion cells in our body, and the amazing thing is they're all potentially in communication with each other. So most of us are familiar with endocrine signals. Those are things like insulin and thyroid hormone and testosterone and growth hormone, major chemicals that affect the vast majority of cells in our body. But there's also paracrine communication. Cells communicate with their neighbors. And there's autocrine communication. Cells communicate with themselves. And so in order to communicate, you've got to have a healthy cell membrane, and you've got to have healthy transmitter substances, and then you have to have health within the cell to respond appropriately. So literally all of the Magnificent Seven strategies influence cell-to-cell communication. Likely the top two things that are going to have the most impact are going to be cell membrane content, which is a mix of omega-3 and omega-6 fats, and we're terribly deficient worldwide in omega-3 fats. And then the second thing is actually going to be pH, acid-alkaline level. And we know that basically hormones and the receptors and enzymes are all pH dependent. We all create a ton of acid every single day. Oxygen goes into the cell, carbon dioxide comes out. It adds to water in the blood to form something called carbonic acid. And we have 100 trillion cells doing this 1 trillion times a day. So all of our elimination routes get rid of acid. As acid accumulates, our cell communication breaks down, and therefore we don't respond to either our endocrine signals, our autocrine signals, or our paracrine signals effectively. And, by the way, the end result of poor communication can be cancer, right? Cells tend to respect each other's boundaries, and they respect each other's, food. So cancer cells don't respect boundaries. They'll crowd into someone else, and they'll eat their food, and they'll poop all over them, and they're just bad neighbors. And a hallmark of cancer is high levels of cellular acidity. By the way, the big three for cancer: low oxygen, low nutrients, high acid. And one of the very first steps in cancer is loss of cellular communication. So just as your relationships with your loved ones, your employees, and everybody in your circle depends on good communication, the same is true for our cells. So get good cell membrane content with proper omega-3s, control the pH, and your 2 steps towards great communication.
Perfect. You wrap that up very, very nicely. Let's move on to number 7, move right.
Well, what can you say more about motion? Life is motion. We do so many things with motion, and it's certainly going to have a major impact on our body composition. That's a fact. It also has a major impact on mitochondria, our cell energy efficiency. As I tell people, we don't just use energy for singing and dancing. Our cells use energy for nutrient absorption, toxin elimination, and cellular repair. We know that top-trained athletes can have double the number of mitochondria, twice as many energy factories within their cell, and triple the enzyme efficiency of the mitochondria. So top athletes can have 600% more energy efficiency. We all now also know since 2011 that exercise increases brain mitochondria. So we actually have a better capacity to think, to process emotion when we exercise appropriately. And the experiential thing that I ask people to do is put yourself in the best physical condition of your life and think about how your body processed stress, how you slept, how everything in your world was. Then compare that to your worst physical shape of your entire existence and look at all those parameters. And most people realize as their body goes down, their world goes down, their emotions go down. And these are indisputable facts. I've always said that a good coach is literally worth their weight in gold. When you realize that people can only take themselves to a certain level, the book, The Talent Code, says the very best of the best, and I think we all want to be the best that we can be, always have 3 things in common. 1, they had passion. 2, they had deep, meaningful practice. And then 3, they all had master coaching. With master coaching, we can take our bodies in the safest most efficient and most effective method to take us where we want to be. As we train our bodies, as we change our body composition, as we enhance our mitochondria, literally every aspect of our being, our mental, our physical, our emotional, our spiritual, even our biochemical get better. And literally life is motion. So eat right, drink right, think right, move right, sleep right, poop right, talk right every single day, and be the best you that you can be.
I've got to say, this has been such a brilliant interview. I've got over an A4 page here of points that you've just said that I've picked up for myself here, along with everything else that I've been writing down at the same time. So I know everyone listening is going to take absolute quality from this talk. So I really appreciate this, and thank you so much for your time. Just before I let you go, I'd really love for you to be able to tell us where people can get in touch with you, see your services, and find more about you.
Absolutely. Thanks, Chris. My website is thedrbob.com. That's THEDRBOB.com. I've got lots of education material available. You can also find me on Facebook. It's my goal to put a number of relevant health posts literally every single week. So if you want to follow me on Facebook, Dr. Bob Rakowski, you can find me there. I'd love to connect with you, and together we can make the world better. So thanks for sharing this time with me, Chris.
Thank you so much, mate. I really, really appreciate it, and we're certainly going to keep in close contact from here on in. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Thank you.
This has been another jaw-dropping podcast from the Fat Loss Pro, Chris DeFay. After subscribing to the Fat Loss Pro podcast,
Go to www.chrisdefay.com
to get your free fat loss diet, training programs, insights, and more to burn fat faster and shape a better body.